Okay, so Michael, you said you started CPG in 1978 when you were a student. Is that correct?
So I went to China in 1975 the first time. Then I was there in 76. I was not in China in 77. I went back to China in 78. As a student, optimistic at the time as always, I thought I would be able to make enough money to keep myself going. Except you couldn't make any money in China in those days. You could make Chinese wages, which wouldn't get me anywhere. Long story short, I started my business as a student first. And then what was interesting is I had this, I was in China on a student visa. Again, those days were very difficult. It was difficult to get into China. And I had this student visa supported by the Australian government and everything else. And then I switched to a business visa without going out of the country, which was deemed impossible. And I managed to do it. And then I heard one other person after that did it too. That other person, by the way, was this fellow Ian Stones, this friend of mine that I told you about.
Hmm.
And then after that, they shut it down, and nobody else was ever able to switch from a student visa in country to a business visa. But we were the first to do that, and those were the days where everything you were doing was kind of trailblazing.
Right.
But yeah, and so started my business that way in 1978.
So you still graduated from a Chinese university, but you had a visa that was not a student visa when you graduated.
No, I had already graduated from my college, and I went to China on what you might call a postgrad type thing, basically to improve my Chinese.
Mm.
And I never finished the course. I got out of it and I started working. That was the reason why I switched from student visa to business visa.
And when you said you couldn't make money in China in 1978, you mean doing the local work. So you needed to start your own business to make money in a different way. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So, in those days, perhaps still today, when you go, say you did a sabbatical in England, as a student, you could make money by working at night in pubs or something. Even in the US, a student that comes in, they're allowed on their student visa, they're allowed, I don't know, 20 hours a week. I don't know what the amount of time is, just to make enough money to keep themselves going, kind of thing. And that's true in Europe, true in America, true in Australia. But
Right.
in China, you couldn't, I thought you could, but you couldn't find any job anywhere.
Hmm.
If I wanted to, I remember at the time I could have gotten a job for 20 renminbi an hour or something.
Which was the equivalent of, I don't even know at that time, it would have been like less than $3 an hour, probably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it wasn't, it was very little. And, I had to, strangely enough, eat food. My accommodations were covered, but my food wasn't. And eventually I found myself borrowing money from fellow students. And I thought, well, how the heck do I make money? And I started writing for newspapers, which was kind of fun because I would write for Belgian newspapers in French, and then I would translate that and write it for the Sydney Morning Herald, the same article.
Cool.
That was the lazy way of. But the problem with that is you'd write an article today, you'd be lucky to receive any payment within 3 or 4 months. So
Hmm.
in terms of, cash flow, that was not a good solution. So I was motivated to start a business, and that's what I did. Anyway, my point was more about the visa
Yeah.
thing that we were talking
Anyway,
about.
it's exciting to hear about your background. I think it's interesting.